Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. My name's Christopher Donald, and I'm going to be doing a demo today on using a template. Actually, I'm going to show using two different templates. We're going to be working with a candle holder template like this, and with a mug template. It looks like this. So the way that these work is you make about a 1/4 inch cross section, a 1/4 inch material, and you cut what's going to be the cross section or the outside design that you want in your throne piece. So often it's the like any kind of little detail, like little ridges or fluting, and also the general shape. And you want to, after you've cut it out, you're going to bevel it on the side that the clay is going into. So there are right-handed and left-handed templates. These are actually right-handed templates because I throw right-handed. So if this was a left-handed template, I would have the beveling going in the opposite direction. So you want the clay turning into the angled part of the template. And that's because this angle on here, this bevel, is going to compress the clay. And that actually makes templated pieces significantly stronger and less likely to warp than ones that have not been either ribbed or templated like this. We'll go ahead and start off with the smaller one. Now the smaller one, I don't necessarily need to use my height gauge the same way. I Actually, I'm trying to think if we ever used the height gauges through these little guys. I don't think we did. They're small enough that you're pretty much using your hands as your measurement for where they're supposed to go on the wheel. And this is only using 3/4 of a pound of clay. And we'll see if I get it dead on in my first try here. Used to throw thousands of these things, but been a while. Right, like everything, first time, before we start, we just want to get this clay stuck down really well in the center of the wheel. And candle holders, smaller forms like this, I throw them a little bit on the faster side because it's you need a little more speed because it's right in the middle of the wheel. And the closer into the center of the wheel head you are, the slower it actually is turning. The farther out on the circumference you are, the faster it goes. So if you're in small like this, it's going to actually be turning a little bit slower for you. And candle holders have a couple of things that are really fun that I like to show. One is just how you bisect the clay. You stick your finger down into the center so that it's not quite all the way to the bottom, and then you split the clay to make the tray. So the middle part here is going to be the center part of the candle holder. And I'm just using my finger and the inside there to pull up the wall. So instead of having like a whole bunch of my hand down in there to help do the lift, I'm doing it with just one finger. And making these the funny thing about it is that you get to a point where you're doing them and you're just kind of like doop 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 doo, and you just pull it right up to the right spot every time. But if I haven't done them in a while, then I'm going to end up having to do a little bit of kind of back and forth looking at it. There we go. So this isn't quite 100% there, but I actually like this to end a tiny bit shy, because when I start putting pressure on the template, it's going to come up a little bit, and that usually finishes it as far as its height. You want to make sure you've got enough water. Speed is good. I want to make sure that I can get down right into the bottom of it so that I don't have my dish sticking up too far. And then I'm pretty much just going to start at the bottom, and I'm putting pressure both from the outside and from my fingertip on the inside. And if it starts to chatter or stick, then you're just going to get a little bit more water. There we go. And I was kind of wiggling back and forth a little bit as I did it so that I could make sure I got the bottom flutes as well as the top flutes. And this is more or less perfect. This would be a slightly, I'd call them a little bit wide for what I was going for, but it's pretty close, especially for not having done it in 12 years or so. And then I can use my wooden tool here to just take that little tip off of it and clean up just that inside edge, and the top part's done. Now the dish, this is the fun one. So you make sure that it's compressed pretty well, and then you want to take off just the very outer edge of it, clean that off. Then I'm going to compress that edge, and then I can slow it down a little bit for this. Then I'm going to slide the tool along the wheel head underneath and lift this up. And I'm compressing against the tool as I lift up. So I'm using my finger on the inside to push against the wall and supporting the wall with my tool. And I can just kind of clean that up a little bit. So it actually compresses the dish as you lift the dish up and smooths the backside of it. And candle holders are kind of like a gateway drug to doing enclosed forms, because you have to start to learn to control your inside and outside clay amounts, and you're throwing with a fairly small amount of clay. So candle holders are weirdly good for training yourself in a whole bunch of different things. Like we would have people throw candle holders to kind of like improve their throwing skills, and it seems like, oh, you're making me make candle holders. But I mean, it takes a lot of precision to churn these out, and we did them in about a minute and a half. So you would make one, boom, we'd cut it off and remove it from the wheel without even stopping the wheel, boom, do another one. I mean, they're incredibly good forms for honing your skill. And this is also how you do the bottom of a flower pot. So it's the exact same idea, just on a bigger scale. This is basically either a candle holder or an incredibly tiny flower pot. So if you wanted to make a dish that's actually on the flower pot, this is how you do it. And I'll probably have a video on that at some point. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this free. One of the things I love about Michael's wires is that I can put them on my support thing here. So, and then I just slide my fingers underneath, and if it deforms a tiny bit, that's not bad. And I'll just put that down. I don't mind if it deforms a little bit because it'll do it pretty regularly, and then I wait until it's early leather hard, and then I just push the dish back into place. All right, so this is going to be a pound of clay. Working our way up. I find that there's like a comfort zone for people when they're throwing as far as what their comfort weight is, and my comfort weight is a pound and a half. My hands are kind of like just the right size for a pound and a half. When I go under a pound and a half, it starts to feel uncomfortable, and I'm thinking about it a lot more. It's just the size of my hands. So you're going to find that depending on the size of your hands, there's going to be a certain size that you are very comfortable at. And that's fine. So that tiny one, I didn't even bother sticking down the edge when I was centering it. This time I'm going to stick down the edge. Pound is a little bit more clay. And you get my clay centered. Now, in my other videos, I talk about how there's 2 points where you can center the clay. With something as small as a candle holder, I mean, you have so much of your hands around it that it's really easy to control. And you almost don't have to worry about the centering. This is as centered as I need. This clay is a little on the lumpy side. I'm going to see how this works. I had a little bit of really lumpy reclaim, which usually lumpy works pretty good for templating, but it's going to look funky when I'm throwing it. All right, opened it up, compressing the floor. Grab my wooden rib here, and I'm going to compress that. All right, now since this one is all funky, he is a good example of that 2 points where you can center it. So I can center it as a lump, or I can center this coil before I do my first pull. There's the one disadvantage of my slightly horsepower underpowered Chinese wheel, is that I can stop this wheel head. I actually just did. Um, normally I don't. This is really stiff clay, so I just clenched it and stopped the wheel. So you can see I centered the coil, so now this is centered. So for a mug template, these I do like to set the height gauge. So what I would do, start using it as a tool holder, bring it over here, go ahead and turn this off for a second, and I would get this set to the height that I need this to be thrown to. So I'm going to go ahead and loosen this up, bring him down a little bit. And these gauges, there we go, are both height and diameter. For one this small, I probably won't really be using it as a diameter one, but for mugs, you sort of throw to certain sizes, and this size mug is kind of where I tend to keep the diameter about the same, like as small as I can fit my hand in. I have big hands, so my thought is always trying to keep it smaller, and I'll do that automatically because it's a mug, so I don't really need to worry too much about the diameter. But you want to get that height set. So now I have a visual guide for when I'm pulling this up. I know at what point I might need to push a little bit more and get a little bit more height out of it. All right, you see a little bit of that wobble from this being really inconsistent, lumpy clay, and that's fine because I'm just going to do it anyway. And this is the sort of thing that I actually like to show because you guys are really likely to run into this sort of thing. Maybe even more likely to run into it than I am. So it's nice for you to see what happens when I have to deal with it. And what's happening is that I'm pushing the lumps up to the top. So I can feel them and I can kind of control for them a little bit. And so my tendency is going to be to just push that inconsistency up to the rim, which is exactly what I want, is I just want to push that up. So this template, so basically, here we go, this is the top. So I've got a little bit of a foot that's in here, and it's essentially a straight mug. So when I throw this, you can see I'm just about at my height. My third pull, I'm going to get this little bit of extra up from the bottom, and now I should be at the right height. There we go. A little bit taller than I need, which is great because he is a little bit off. When you get this, don't keep trimming it. So what I see a lot of people do is they kind of, each time they pull up, they trim off this wobble at the top, but you're going to keep putting it back in usually. So I leave it until the very last thing that I do. So it'll make you crazy. Your eye kind of wants to follow it, but if you can kind of see past that, then it's easier if you just leave it in place. Another thing that I like to do with these mug ones is I like to kind of do a pre-compression of the mug. Now this is smaller than my hand, so I'm going to run into some issues. And I'm going to push that bottom out a little bit. There we go, and template the wall. By pushing that bottom out, it gives me a little bit of material for the foot. And I'm going to make sure I add a good amount of water. And I turn it down a little bit. I want some speed, but I don't want it out of control. You also might need to dip your hand in the water to make sure that it doesn't stick. And I start at the bottom, put pressure, and then just work my way up the wall. There we go. So by leaving that little bit of extra at the top, I can trim that off now, and that will be the top of my mug. So I purposely I was like, I got a bad rim there. I'm just going to go a little bit high with it, and then that way I can take it off. Grab a pin tool. That's an X-Acto blade. That's a pin tool. Okay. For trimming top edges, you're going to kind of pinch the clay with your fingers and run the pin tool on the top of your thumb and just push it through the wall until you feel it touch with your finger on the inside and then lift up. So the wall thickness is slightly off. So that means I've got probably one chunk of stiff clay inside of there, and it was just giving me fits, and it just doesn't matter. There's no way you're going to make every piece perfectly the right thickness every single time. I've been doing this for almost 40 years, and I don't do that, so don't worry about it when that happens. So I'll clean this up. If I have a hard time getting that inner edge to kind of want to fold down a little bit for me, I'll just use my wooden tool rather than trying to put an increasing amount of pressure with my sponge, which is going to deform the wall. I want to just do it with a little bit of a wood tool. I'm needing to be really careful at this stage of these marks because these are fairly soft right now. I just formed this. Later, once this gets to set up a little bit, they'll be a little more durable. But for right now, I don't really want to touch those. I'm just going to smash them. All right. Now, because of that, traditionally, we're going to pick these up with pot lifters. I can't touch the sides without deforming them. For the sake of this demo, I'm going to pick this thing up because I don't really care if he survives. But you would want to use pot lifters to pick this up. All right? And so that is how you throw with templates. These were used a lot in the turn of the century when they started to industrialize the ceramics process. The idea was that they were trying to make things which were much more decorative and still do it in the same amount of time. And also they wanted to start reducing the skill level required to make some of the work. Now, throwing with templates does take some skill, but they would do a similar thing with their handles, with extruded handles and with sprig molds, and this is all part of the same kind of design thought process. So they all kind of work together really well. If you look at a lot of the work from the early 1800s to early 1900s, it all falls into this kind of category. I think for a lot of people, like if you do really a lot of image-based work, this is fantastic because you've got a perfect little canvas and the template makes everything smooth. You get rid of the throwing lines. This is great for like sgraffito, for doing kinds of different kinds of decoration. And this is the sort of thing I did when I was making a lot of mochaware, which is design collection of designs from the 1800s. Anyhow, thanks for joining me, and I'll see you back here again soon. Make sure you subscribe if you want alerts on new content, and there's a lot more coming. So I've been kind of leaving the wheel throwers hanging for a little bit, so I'm going to have some more wheel throwing content out here. All right, take care. See you soon. Bye.